You wake before the first hint of sun. The house is still, silent except for the rhythmic breathing of a few slaves on the marble floor outside your sleeping quarters. You sit up slowly, wrapped in linen, and remember your duty. Tonight is the feast, and not just any feast, it is his feast. Gaius Antistius Vetus, senator, patron, glutton, and one of Rome's most unpredictable men. You are not a cook nor a server. You are something more curious, a planner of pleasures, a curator of debauchery. Your official title doesn't exist in the records of the Senate, but people like you grease the wheels of Rome's elite. Your task, to orchestrate the rhythm of indulgence, to ensure the oysters are slightly chilled but not cold, that the figs arrive overripe, on the verge of collapse, that the candles don't burn too quickly lest shadows fall at the wrong time, that the scent of cinnamon oil fills the air. Not so strong as to remind guests of medicine, but just enough to stir memories of North African nights. Your first order of business is to visit the perfumer. You take a covered litter to the Subura, the cramped and dirty heart of Rome where even the brothels wrinkle their noses. The perfumer is an old woman who pretends not to recognize you, though she's blended oils for 5 of your past feasts. Her hands tremble slightly, not from age, but from decades of working with myrrh and storax and nard. She presents you with 3 oils. You sniff each carefully. One reminds you of funerals. No. The second smells too sweet, like a child's treat. The third is perfect. It has weight, memory. It speaks of mystery. From there you pass the bakery where cakes shaped like genitals are cooling. Not a detail you requested, but the client enjoys the vulgar. At the house, construction continues. A temporary fountain has been installed in the atrium, fed by stolen water from a nearby aqueduct. You told the client it was symbolic of Bacchus. The truth is, it simply masks the smell of overripe seafood in the heat. The musicians arrive next. They're late, as always. Syrian flutists with their eyes downcast, never speaking unless asked. You test the acoustics in the triclinium. The tiles echo. You'll need more drapery, soft purple fabric to deaden the sound. In the kitchen, the lead cook is panicking. The peacock tongues haven't arrived, nor have the dormice. You write a note and send a boy sprinting through the streets. It's not about taste, it's about power. Power lies in serving something that should not be served. The guests will remember. You pause at midday. The sun slants through the courtyard, catching the sheen of gold in the floor mosaics. You sip watered wine not because you want to, but because that's what they expect. And to survive in your role, you must always behave like you belong, even when surrounded by people who believe you do not. A young woman arrives, barely more than a girl. She's a dancer, imported from Hispania. She doesn't speak Latin well, but her eyes hold calculation. You explain her role with gestures. She nods slowly. There is resignation in her movements. You wonder sometimes what becomes of them. The musicians, the dancers, the cupbearers, none of them are remembered in the scrolls, but tonight they will be essential. They are the feast. Later in the afternoon, the wine steward visits. He complains about the amphorae again. Last time, one was cracked. The floor was sticky for days. You nod, pretending to care. You don't. What matters is the illusion of control. Guests must feel that nothing has gone wrong, that their pleasure was inevitable, that their host is a god of plenty, and you merely his invisible hand. As the sky darkens, you review the list. It is not written, too dangerous, but it lives in your head. Senator Balbus prefers young figs. Lucilla won't sit next to her. Ex-husband. Marcellus is allergic to pine nuts. Someone must watch the slaves who refill the wine. Last time one drank too much and vomited near the fountain. You walk through the atrium one last time. The torches are being lit. The marble glows. You've added red petals to the pool. A meaningless gesture, but it looks expensive. A servant hands you a robe. It's fresh, barely creased. You will not join the feast, not really, but you must appear. You must smile as if nothing weighs on your mind, even as you calculate how much fish sauce is left, even as you wonder whether the senator will remember your name in the morning. And yet, you find yourself wondering, when did it all begin? When did Rome decide that celebration meant excess? That desire was a thing to be managed, scheduled, arranged like a play? Did it begin with the Greeks, with Dionysian rites? Or was it always there, this hunger to orchestrate pleasure and call it power? Perhaps tomorrow you'll remember to ask the old perfumer, if she's still alive. You stand behind the column just left of the entrance arch, watching as the first guests arrive. They are late, of course. In Rome, to be early is to admit eagerness. To arrive precisely on time is to confess anxiety. Only the powerful arrive late, and only the foolish believe it's by accident. The senator descends the stairs in crimson-trimmed linen, arms slightly outstretched as though receiving worship. He sees you but doesn't acknowledge you. That too is a kind of recognition. A young man at the door announces each guest, mispronouncing names on purpose when he dislikes someone. You let him do it. It adds texture to the evening. Everything. Here is calculated down to the last unspoken insult. The triclinium is lit in tiers, soft warm lamps toward the reclining couches, darker shadows where the slaves walk barefoot, unseen. The torchlight dances across bronze, flesh, grapes, pearls. The layout is perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. You can already sense the eyes beginning to roll behind gold-rimmed cups, and so you cue the first diversion. The dancer from Hispania enters. Too soon, some might say. But her movements are slow, sinuous, unpredictable, like a smoke trail or spilled ink. Her dress is translucent enough to please the senator, but heavy enough to displease his wife. Just the right balance. The musicians follow. Their tune is sharp. At first, offensive to older ears, then melts into something resembling a lullaby. Guests don't even notice the shift, but their conversations get softer, their gestures wider. Laughter rises in places where silence lived only moments ago. Behind the wall you make notes in your mind. Senator Lucullus arrived with a new companion. Young, quiet, blonde. Not his wife. Perhaps a message to someone else. Perhaps a test. Lucilla drank faster than expected. The servant assigned to her will need to alternate real wine with watered-down Falernian. The food begins to circulate. First, the expected. Honeyed dates, warm olives, puffed spelt. Then, the decadent. Flamingo. Tongues eel cooked in fermented barley. Eggs dyed green with saffron. You avoid the kitchen entirely. That world is its own kingdom now, hot, chaotic, full of knives and sweat. You only receive the results. You do, however, keep an eye on the peacock tongues. They were sourced late, imported at great cost. Their texture is chewy, their taste unremarkable, but their name alone carries weight. Guests pretend to enjoy them. That too is part of the ritual. Then it happens. A commotion at the western end of the atrium. A goblet spilled. A woman's voice. Raised, slightly too loud. Someone steps on the hem of a tunic. You lean closer, it's the senator's wife. She's drunk or pretending to be. It's difficult to tell. She has taken an interest in one of the dancers, the male one. He's not part of the plan. He was a last-minute addition by the musician's brother. But he's beautiful, and that's enough to make him dangerous. You move quickly, quietly. A whispered order. The dancer is reassigned to play the panpipes in the corner. Useless, but out of the way. The senator does not react. Whether he noticed or not, he chooses to appear unconcerned. He has learned, better than most, that the appearance of indifference is more powerful than the performance of rage. You adjust a cushion under Marcellus's elbow. He is snoring gently into a plate of olives. His reputation as a wit is undeserved. He only speaks when drunk. And now, mercifully, he is asleep. Elsewhere, the poet has begun to recite. He wasn't invited. He never is. He simply arrives, drawn by the scent of wine and self-importance. His voice is nasal, his metaphors tired, but his presence reassures certain guests. There is a certain security in knowing that someone worse than you is in the room. Near the end of the second course, the senator gestures to a servant, who gestures to another, who finally approaches you. The senator is pleased. This message arrives without words. Just a nod, a flick of the eyes, a tilt of the wine cup. But you understand, the feast is working. And so you begin to shift the energy again. Softer music. Lower lights. The scent of myrrh added to the oil burners. The older guests stretch and yawn. The younger ones move closer to each other. Eyes linger longer. Hands move without consequence. This is the time for illusion, for letting the wine convince the body that it has permission, for letting the music rearrange the mind. You walk among the shadows, adjusting small things, a curtain drawn tighter, a platter removed just before it turns rancid, a slave redirected before his shaking hands spill another cup. None of the guests notice you. They think the evening flows naturally, like a river over smooth stone. They do not see the dams and channels you've placed beneath their feet. One guest does notice you, though. A woman, perhaps 20, perhaps. Not the food, not the wine, not the games or the scent or the golden shimmer, but this act of construction, this hidden labor of mood and memory. You do not answer. You cannot. To answer is to admit that you are here, and you are not. You are only a whisper behind the curtain. You disappear before the final course. The slaves will handle the dessert, cheese soaked in honey, fruit served on cooled marble, wine mixed with crushed flowers. By then, most will be too far gone to notice what they're eating, or who they're eating it with. You sit in the servants' corridor in the flickering dark and sip the last of your wine. You remember your mentor, now long dead. He once told you, the goal is not to impress. The goal is to be invisible. The greatest pleasure is the one they never think to thank you for. But you wonder just for a moment, is invisibility power, or just another form of slavery? The first thing you notice is the smell, not incense, not perfume, not the heady sweetness of roasted nuts or cinnamon-soaked pears, but the other scent, the one no one prepares for. The scent of aftermath. You return just before dawn, long after the guests have vanished into chariots or collapsed in guest rooms. The atrium is dim, the torches are embers, the petals in the fountain have turned dark, bruised. A single sandal floats where someone must have tripped, laughed, forgotten. A servant sweeps carefully, dragging dust and discarded fig stems across the marble with a slow, tired rhythm. The sound echoes more now that the voices are gone. You step silently through the space you once orchestrated with such precision, and now you see the wreckage. A wine stain blooms across a silk couch. A pearl earring lies beneath the feet of a broken statue. One of the dancers is asleep on the floor, her limbs tangled in the corner drapery. No one has covered her. No one remembers her performance. The senator's wife has left her bracelet behind. It lies near the mosaic of Mercury. How fitting. You pick it up, turn it over once in your hand, then set it on a low table, where a slave will find it and quietly return it without a word. There is no applause. No recognition, only silence. In the kitchen, the fires are dead. The cooks have vanished. A single amphora has cracked and bled its contents onto the floor. It smells of sour grapes and warm vinegar. You step around it. One of the younger servers stirs as you pass. His eyes flutter open, then close again. He will wake with bruises from where a guest pinched his arm too hard. He won't speak of it. Neither will anyone else. You find your usual place, the alcove near the servants' corridor where you left your sandals earlier. They're still there, dusty, misshapen, forgotten, and you sit. You do not cry. That's not how it works. But there is a heaviness in the chest that rises, shifts, then settles again, like a tired animal curling into itself. Your mind replays the night, not for pleasure, but for calculation. What went wrong? What was missed? What must be accounted for? The senator's gaze lingered on the wrong dancer for too long. Lucilla left early. She never does. You'll have to send someone to ask why. The cheese arrived slightly too soft. The kitchen was overheated. And the poetry. Gods, the poetry. It nearly ruined the pacing. You add all of it to the invisible scroll in your mind. No one teaches you this work. There are no manuals, no handbooks, only memory and instinct and failure. You think of your first feast. You were 17, a minor official's birthday. You forgot to remove the bowls of garum from the heat too early, and the scent ruined the mood. The client was furious. You weren't paid, but you remembered. You always remember. Now, your name is whispered in certain circles. You don't advertise, you don't need to. Those who want this kind of evening, this kind of controlled chaos, find you. They always do, and yet no one knows you, not really. They know your work, your results, your silence, your ability to make the impossible feel inevitable. but not. Your story, not your face, not your reasons. You rise and stretch, joints cracking softly in the cold air. Outside, Rome is beginning to stir. The bread ovens light. The first carts rattle over the cobblestones. Somewhere a magistrate yawns and tightens his belt. A mother calls for her child. A pickpocket slides through the market crowd like a shadow. The city forgets. That is Rome's greatest talent. Tonight's feast will become a rumor, then a story, then an exaggeration. The senator will claim the wine was older than it was. Lucilla will deny she ever attended. The poet will say he was invited. And you? You will not be mentioned at all, but you'll remember. You'll remember how many torches burned, how many courses were served, who laughed too loudly and who faked their smile. You'll remember the shape of the shadows on the floor and the way the dancer's breath caught as she waited for her cue. You'll remember it all, because someone must. You step outside, squinting into the morning light. The world is pale now, faded like old marble, and for a moment you wonder, when Rome falls, will anyone record this part of it? Not the wars, not the conquests, but the strange, precise rituals of pleasure, the planners, the candles, the scent of roses beneath the vomit. Will they know we made maps of desire? That behind the statues and the scrolls on the roads, there were hands arranging figs on platters, counting cups, hiding bruises. Or will they only write of emperors and battles? You walk away, robe clutched tighter. Behind you, a servant scrubs. The floor with vinegar and rag. The sandal in the fountain has sunk. A bird lands on the windowsill and pecks at something unidentifiable, and Rome continues, loud, hungry, unseen, just like you. The city is loud, but beneath that noise is another. Rhythm quieter, slower, a rhythm of steps, rope pulls, shouted numbers, and the scratch of iron on stone. You rise just before sunrise, as you have every day for years, not because anyone wakes you, but because the city must be measured before the city begins to move. You are a grammaticus, though the word is never said aloud in your presence. Officially, you are a slave, property, but unofficially, you are essential. You carry the staff, you hold the rod, you run the measuring chain, you chart the empire in lines invisible until carved in stone. Today, the task is simple, on the surface. A patrician has purchased land on the Aventine. He wants a new domus, and for that, he requires the services of Rome's land surveyors. You carry the chain. It is a bronze chain, 30 feet in length, divided into links so precise they are checked against the standard every 10 days. Not because of you, but because of them, the engineers, the patrons, the people whose land must be shaped into words and contracts and fences. The chain is heavy, cold in the morning. It smells of dust, sweat, and metal. You carry it over your shoulder like a burden, and it is. But it is also your freedom in a way, because as long as you carry it well, you remain needed. And as long as you are needed, you are not forgotten. You walk alongside Marcus, a freedman who once held your job. Now he carries the wax tablets. He records your steps, your counts, your errors. He does not speak unless he must. The last man, who spoke too much, was sent back to the quarries. At the hill's base, the others arrive. Decimus, the official surveyor, in fine linen and sandals, too clean for work. And 2 boys to hold the poles. You do not look at Decimus unless he speaks to you, and he rarely does. But his eyes rest on you when he checks the alignment. He trusts your hand, even if he won't say it. The tools are unpacked. The groma, a cross-shaped instrument for sighting straight lines. The libra, a level made of bronze and thread. The dioptra, though it's barely used today, too fine for this basic plot. You stretch the chain. The boys plant poles in the earth. You walk, backwards, carefully, counting paces under your breath. The chain must stay taut, not too loose or it sags, not too tight or it warps. You have learned the balance in your bones. A dog barks. Somewhere nearby, a child begins to cry. But in your world, only the distance matters. 30 feet. Drop the chain. Move again. Reset. Marcus records the mark. Decimus adjusts his line of sight. The land is not flat, but it must be measured as though it were. That is the lie Rome tells itself, that it can tame the world with straight lines. You once asked quietly why they didn't just look and guess. Decimus overheard. He said without malice, "Because this is Rome, and Rome does not guess." You remember that lesson. By mid-morning, the sun has begun to rise over the rooftops, casting long shadows across your line. This is the hardest part, when light deceives the eye. You shade your gaze and check the alignment. Your chain brushes a patch of crushed flowers. Someone's garden, no longer theirs. You pause only once. A thorn has worked its way into your sandal. You remove it with the tip of the measuring rod. No one offers to help. That's not how this works. Marcus passes you a fig from his pouch. It is bruised. You eat it in silence. Decimus sighs. The slope is steeper than expected. He mutters something about having to consult the architect. You hear him say your name, but not to you, to the boy beside him. He'll fix it, and you will. You begin the recalculation. It will take twice as long. The new line must avoid a cistern below ground. Forgotten, unmarked, dangerous. You mark the error on a shard of pottery and slide it into your pouch. Later, you'll copy it onto the wax board. If they let you, by noon your shoulders ache. Not from the weight, but from the tension, the fear of error. You remember the last feast you measured for. A villa on the Appian Way. The chain had been damaged, you didn't know. The floor came out uneven. The senator screamed at the architect, who screamed at the engineer, who screamed at Decimus. Decimus said nothing. But that night you slept outside, in the rain, without food. Now you check the chain before and after every use. A voice calls from above. The architect has arrived. He's loud. He's young. He waves his hands in wide. Arcs. He disagrees with Decimus. Decimus disagrees back quietly. You stand still. Eventually someone notices the poles are in the wrong place. You don't correct them. You wait for the argument to finish. When it does, you calmly move the poles. Again. Slowly. Precisely. The architect makes a joke about slaves, not needing to understand geometry. No one laughs. Even Marcus looks away. You press the chain into the earth and whisper the count. 30 feet. 30 again. Then 15. Then an odd 8. You nod. It fits. At the edge of the plot, a child watches you from behind a fig tree. She is silent. Curious. You wonder what she sees. A man, a servant, a machine. You raise the chain, coil it, and turn toward the sun. The line is done. But the day is not. Tomorrow, you will return to mark the decumanus, the east-west axis. Then the cardo, then the grid. Rome builds from the grid outward, always outward. Order before chaos. Lines before life. You remember something Decimus once said. A city isn't built when the walls go up. It's built when the first line is drawn. And you drew it. But as you shoulder your tools and descend the slope, dust in your eyes and sweat down your back, you wonder, who remembers the hand that held the chain? You begin before the sun again. This time your path takes you deeper into the city. Not the hills, but the flat quarters, where mud clings to sandals and carts leave ruts in the earth like scars. This land will be tamed, too. It always is. Today's assignment is the cardo and decumanus, the sacred lines. Every Roman city is born from them, as if geometry were divine. The decumanus stretches east to west, chasing the sun. The cardo runs north to south, cutting the land like a blade. Together they form a cross no one worships, yet all obey. You carry the groma. It is heavier than it looks, bronze arms and weighted plumb lines hanging like a spider from its perch. It must stand straight. If the wind breathes too strong, it wobbles. If the ground shifts, it lies. You walk with Decimus again. He is quiet this morning. His left sandal is worn. He favors the right foot. You wonder how long he'll last. Surveyors do not live long. Eyes fade, backs bend. And without precision, they become irrelevant. The site is still under preparation, cleared, half-leveled, rock stacked in lines that pretend to be walls. A few olive trees stand on the edges, stubborn and old. Someone will dig them out soon. Nothing ancient survives the grid. You plant the groma and wait for the alignment. Marcus steps 30 paces to the east and lifts his rod. You squint, tilt the crossbar, adjust the thread. Then with a deep breath you call the mark. There. He drives a stake into the earth. Again. Step. Adjust. Mark. Every step defines where walls will rise, where markets will stand, where people will argue and bleed and build lives. And none of them will know that it began here, between your fingers, with your eyes squinting into dust. As the sun climbs higher, the measurements grow more difficult. The light bends. Shadows deceive. You count chain lengths by feel more than sight. 30 feet, 30 again, and again. At midday, a minor official stops by. He wears a green toga, too bright for someone that irrelevant. He complains about the location of the bathhouse, claims the Cardo leans too far west. Decimus explains patiently that the city grid is set by the heavens, not convenience. The man does not understand, but he nods. That is enough. Behind him, 2 slaves carry scrolls, property records, grain quotas, inventories of stone and wood. One of them stumbles, the scrolls fall. The official doesn't help. He doesn't even notice. You help because no one else will. The slave thanks you with his eyes, not his voice. Later, the architect returns again. He has questions. You have no answers. He gestures at the sky and talks of domes. He does not understand foundations. He leaves in frustration. Decimus shakes his head. He builds shadows, he mutters. We build the sun. You nod, not because you agree, but because it keeps the peace. In the afternoon, the crowd grows. Locals gather to watch, pretending to be curious, but mostly they come for gossip. Whispers about who owns which plot, whose wall encroaches on whose line. A woman insists that a public path runs through her garden. She is wrong. You measured it twice. You hold the chain up silently. She spits. You say nothing. The dust thickens as oxen drag stone toward the edge of the site. The wheels groan, the men curse, and still you walk the line, measure, adjust, mark. At one point Marcus slips. The chain jerks. You startle. One measurement is off. Decimus notices. He walks slowly over, stands too close, speaks too softly. You lose the line, he says. You lose your place. You lower your head, not in shame, but in survival. He moves on. You reset the line, recount. The angle is good. The stake is straight. No one will know. At sunset, the final point is marked. The Cardo and Decumanus intersect, clean, sharp, pure. You stand at the crossing and imagine the city. Streets, vendors, processions, fires, floods, lovers, riots, all of it will pass through here, through this unseen, silent moment. A man, a rod, and a line in the dust. The work is complete, but Decimus doesn't leave. He sits near the edge of the site, unwrapping a piece of stale bread. He gestures for you to join him. You hesitate, then do. For a long time, neither of you speaks. Then he says, "You ever see a map of the Empire?" You nod. He stares out into the rising night. You ever wonder who made those lines? You don't answer. He tosses a pebble into the dirt. We did. Men like us. They draw the battles, the names, the emperors. But those lines, those are ours. They don't say it, but it's true. You nod again, because it is. The sky grows dark. torches flicker. A boy chases a dog across the fresh-marked street. A woman hums near a cart of lentils. Life is already stitching itself into the geometry, but you still sit at the crossing. The sacred center. You touch the line with your finger, just once, to feel that it's real, and you wonder, do cities remember the hands that shaped them? The next morning, the builders arrive. They come in groups, loud and covered in lime dust, swinging hammers and carrying wood. Some have already started arguments over tools, over wages, over who moves what stone where. You are no longer needed, at least not today. Your work is already beneath them, quite literally. Your lines are buried now beneath foundation trenches, trampled by sandals and donkey hooves. The precise geometry you bent over in the cold dawn has become nothing more than the path for carts and the reason someone's future wall won't collapse. You sit at the edge of the site, watching. The poles are gone, the chain coiled and stored. The groma has been carried off to the next location, where someone else, maybe you, maybe another, will stretch the empire into shape. Marcus passes you a small wax tablet. It's the record of yesterday's measurements. Tidy, square, exact. He's neat in his notation. You admire that. Decimus has not arrived. He rarely watches the building phase. Once the lines are drawn, the rest is noise to him. A boy arrives on bare feet, holding out a scroll sealed with cheap wax. It bears the insignia of the local municipal office. You recognize the handwriting. It's Decimus. Inside is a new task. You are to measure a drainage channel on the outskirts of the district. Not a prestigious job. No grand villa. No axis mundi. Just a ditch. You nod. This is how it works. One moment you are drawing sacred geometry. The next, you're knee-deep in wet sand measuring slope and runoff. And yet both are required. Both are Rome. You rise and begin walking, the chain slung over your shoulder once more. As you pass the new construction site, a carpenter yells at a mason. A woman sells wine from a jug. A priest sprinkles water on a marked doorway. A dog urinates on one of your former stakes. You do not pause. You do not correct them. You reach the edge of the district just as the sun burns through the mist. The land is quieter here. The smell of wood smoke and fish replaces marble dust and crushed flowers. Channel has been partially dug, badly. The incline is wrong. The water pools instead of flowing. You crouch and begin your calculations. From the satchel, you remove your rod and level. The chain stays in your hand, coiled like a question. No one watches you this time. There is no crowd, no architect, just earth and gravity. You make the first mark. It vanishes into damp soil, but you make another, and another. You realize as you work how often your job disappears beneath others. Your stake becomes a cornerstone. Your chalk line becomes a shadow on someone's floor. Your count becomes someone's window. Your silence becomes someone else's. Power. You once thought you might earn your freedom through this work, that you would be granted a name, a house, a small plot of land. Now you know better. Even Decimus, free and respected, lives in a rented room above a baker. His name appears on records, but never in stone. You've seen it. He hides his disappointment well. But still, you measure. You calculate. You correct the slope of the ditch and test the flow with a handful of poured. Later, you rest beneath a fig tree. Your hands smell of wet clay and bronze. You wipe them on your tunic and pull out a scrap of charcoal. On the edge of your wax tablet, you draw a simple line, then a cross, the grid, the city, again and again, until the wax is nearly black. You do this not for beauty, not for memory, but for balance. You were taught that a straight line is not just a tool, it is a promise. That order can be drawn from chaos. That land can become law. that the world can be measured if not controlled. But you know the truth. Straight lines fade. Chains rust. The earth shifts. The streets crack and people forget. They forget who stood in the dawn with shaking fingers, trying to align bronze threads with the horizon. Who counted chain lengths in the rain. Who marked the cornerstones in silence. But still you draw the line because cities must begin somewhere, and sometimes beginnings are enough. You begin the day already sweating. It's not even sunrise, and the air presses down on you like a thick wool blanket soaked in vinegar. Summer in Rome is a cruel kind of fire, one that doesn't flicker or dance but sits on your chest and waits, the kind of heat that soaks into stone and refuses to leave, even after the sun sinks behind the hills. You are not a priest, not a soldier, not a senator. You are an aqua umbrarum, a shadow worker. That's not an official title. There is no oath or office for it. The real engineers call you something else entirely, something less flattering. But you know the truth. You manage. The shade. You tend to it like a gardener. You shape it, redirect it, learn how it pulls against stone and how it slips between columns. Your life is dedicated to helping others avoid the heat, especially the ones who don't know your name. It began with the aqueducts, grand structures, masterpieces of Roman logic. They snake across the land like marble limbs, carrying the cold breath of distant hills into the heart of the empire. But to you, the aqueduct is not just about water. It's about shade. Every pillar, every arch, every carved cornice casts a shadow. And in Rome, shadows are precious. They are currency, power, protection. You learned the angles when you were young. You were a helper on the crew that maintained the Aqua Claudia. At first, they gave you simple jobs, dragging tools, sweeping, bird droppings, carrying messages to men higher up the scaffolding. But one day an older man took you aside. "You see that line?" he said, pointing to where the sun cut across a row of arches. "That's where people will stand when the market comes. They don't even know it yet, but they will." You nodded. "Now, look again," he said, "and tell me where the shade will be at midday." You guessed. You were wrong, he laughed. Then he showed you, and from that moment on you watched not the water but the shadow. Now, decades later, you walk the edge of the Subura district with a wooden rod, measuring the lengths of cool stone against blistering brick. Not because anyone asked you to, but because the city needs it, even if it doesn't know. There is a baker's stall that overheats by noon. You arrange for an awning to be hung earlier, not too wide, or it will collapse in the breeze, just enough to save the loaves from turning hard too soon. A fountain where old women fill jugs loses its crowd after 10. You trace the problem to a crumbling pillar that no longer casts its morning shadow. You report it quietly to a stonemason, who shakes his head and promises to patch it. He won't. But you tried. You pause near the baths of Trajan. The wall is hot to the touch. You place your hand on the stone anyway. Feel it, understand it. This wall needs vines, not for beauty, for insulation. You make a note on a scrap of papyrus: climb ivy on west face, leave root space. No one will read it. No one ever does. You pass a group of children huddled beneath. A broken arch, their skin pink with sunburn. You toss a bundle of reeds near them, materials for weaving a screen. You don't wait for thanks, because the work isn't about recognition. It's about survival. Rome has many enemies, but the most ancient one is the sun. It fades the frescoes, warps the carts, cracks the lips, blinds the eyes. And yet, the elite never speak of it. They retreat into villas with water-cooled walls, and slaves who fan them with ostrich feathers. They praise Apollo, then curse the heat. You, on the other hand, deal with it. You know the hour when the archway near the forum casts just enough shade for a brief nap. You know which statues stay cool longest. which steps stay slippery with condensation, which colonnades are best for old men with aching knees, and you know the quiet miracle of an aqueduct's underbelly, where moss grows, where lizards sleep, where the hum of water feels like a song. Your tools are simple: a rod marked with midday lengths, a strip of polished bronze for reflecting light angles, a bundle of chalk for marking stone, a pocket full of twine for stringing temporary shelters. But more than that, you carry knowledge, invisible, unsung, unrequested. You were once asked why you keep doing it, why you spend your days wandering Rome, adjusting angles and muttering. About sunlight, you answered, because someone has to think about the shade. That was 10 years ago. The man who asked is dead now. Heat stroke, you check your shadow. It has shortened. Noon is close. You climb the steps to a terrace that overlooks the market street. Below, a dozen stalls are crammed against the wall, all angled the wrong way. You frown. Too much fabric, not enough airflow. By afternoon, the bread will sweat, the olives will spoil, and the wine will taste like vinegar. You sigh. You make another note. In the distance, you see a small group of engineers walking along the top of the aqueduct. They laugh. Point. One of them notices you. This old dusty man with sun-scarred hands and a limp from a misstep years ago. He waves awkwardly. He doesn't know your name, but he knows you're always around. That's enough. You sit under the nearest arch. Feel the breeze sneak through. Just a whisper, but it's real. And you wonder, when Rome burns, as it always does, who will remember the man who placed the shadow exactly where it needed to be? The sun is at its zenith. The world blurs in the heat. Columns ripple like mirages. Even the dogs refuse to move. The air feels less like breath and more like punishment. And yet here you are, walking slowly under the shadow of the Aqua Marcia, one of Rome's oldest arteries. It snakes through the outskirts like the ribs of some buried god, casting thick slabs of cool darkness across the grass and gravel below. You know these arches better than most people know their own homes. You've walked their length, measured their shade, counted the number of bricks in each pillar, 12,122, give or take. You pause beneath a familiar arch. It is wider here, the angle more generous. The aqueduct was slightly misaligned at this point centuries ago. Some called it a flaw. You call it a gift. It's where the shade lasts the longest. You sit, unroll your wax tablet, and begin to mark down today's solar notes, an informal log you've kept for over 20 years. Hour 6, shadow extends 4 paces east. Hour 7, bread seller moved cart 1 pace back into shade. Hour 8, dog found spot, refused to leave. Hour 9, too hot for flies, quiet. Still, you've used the same stylus since your 4th year in this trade. The edge is blunted now, but it still draws smooth curves. You make a small sketch of the arch, just lines and dots, a visual reminder of the morning's calm. A noise breaks your rhythm. Hooves. A cart approaches. It's the fishmonger. You've helped him before, showed him how to stack crates so the sun hits only the salted fish, not the fresh ones. He nods at you in thanks, doesn't say a word. Just nods and parks under the best arch. That nod means more than a title ever could. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to listen. The aqueduct hums above, water fast and quiet, a constant current just beyond reach. You can almost hear it speaking. You imagine a world before these arches, a time before shadow was shaped and ordered, before men carved hillsides and stacked stone not for gods, but for comfort. You wonder what it was like to live entirely at the mercy of the sky. And then you remember most people still do. You rise and walk toward the workers gathered near a broken pillar. They are young, new to the maintenance crew. One holds a chisel like it's a weapon. Another smokes something pungent, careless of the wind. The foreman spots you. He groans. "Old man," he says. "We don't need advice today." You don't argue, you never do, you simply point. Above their heads a crack barely visible, just a line where the weight has begun to shift. You tap the brick with your knuckle, hollow. The young ones blink. The chisel is lowered. The foreman sighs. "How long?" you answer softly. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Sooner if it rains. He swears, sends a boy running to the stonemasons. You keep walking, because your job is not to enforce. Your job is to notice. Later, you pass the baths, steam rising despite the heat. It's empty, not because of cost, but because the stone has stored too much warmth. The floors burn the feet. You step inside anyway, walking to the far end where a forgotten alcove hides beneath a broken lintel. Here the stone is cooler. The heat has not reached it yet. You take a piece of chalk from your pouch, mark a circle on the wall, a memory for someone else, a sign that says, "Here, the air still breathes." You sit, lean your head back and drift. When you wake, a boy is staring at you, not a worker, just a child, dirty, curious. He holds a broken reed and gestures, mimicking your measurements. You take your bronze mirror, small, dented, polished from years of sun-spotting, and place it in his hand. The boy squints into it, laughs. You show him how to catch a sunbeam, reflect it across the floor, make the light move where it does not belong. He lights up, chases the beam, and for a moment, the bathhouse is alive again. You leave the mirror. With him, you have others, and some tools are only useful when passed on. Back outside, the sun has begun to descend. The shadows grow long. Your time resumes. You make one final round, checking the stalls along the market edge. A fruit vendor has rearranged his awning based on your advice from last week. He smiles thinly. His grapes are still firm. His melon hasn't soured. You nod in return. Not every success is shouted. You return to your route beneath the aqueduct arches, count the paces, listen to the stone. It still speaks, if you know how to listen. And as the day softens into gold, and the city finally begins to exhale, you ask yourself, when these arches crumble, who will rebuild them? Not the emperors, not the generals, not the poets, the ones who felt the heat, the ones who knew the weight of shade, the ones who measured silence and mapped relief. And maybe, just maybe, the ones who placed a mirror in the hand of a child and showed him how to redirect the sun. It begins with a sound, a soft rumble, so faint it might have been thunder. But the sky is clear, and Rome does not hear thunder this time of year. You know the sound. You've known it since your second year under the arches. It's the sound of stress, of stone finally shifting after years of holding its breath. You drop your measuring rod and turn toward the eastern side of the Aqua Marcia. It's the section you warned them about, the one with the hollowed pillar and the crooked seam along the upper arch. Dust curls up like steam from boiling pots. The collapse has started. People shout. Dogs scatter. A boy cries out, too close to the fall line. You run. You do not run often anymore. Your knees crack, your sandals flap. But your body remembers old instincts. You reach the boy just as a fist-sized stone falls, shattering beside. His foot. He's frozen, staring up, mouth open in awe or terror. You grab his shoulder. He looks at you. Recognition flashes across his eyes. The boy from the baths, the one with the mirror. You pull him back, just enough. The arch groans again, and Then slowly, without grandeur or explosion, it sags. The uppermost course gives way. A dozen bricks tumble down, knocking loose a column of fluted stones. It doesn't crash, it folds, like tired parchment. The dust takes longer to fall than the stone. When it's over, a single arch is gone. The rest stands, though uneven now, like a half smile after bad news. People gather. Voices rise. A Legion officer appears, sweating beneath his helmet, and begins barking orders. No one listens. Not really. The boy still clings to your robe. You brush dust from his face, hand him back the bent mirror. It somehow survived. And then, quietly, you walk to the rubble. You place a hand on the stone, still warm from the sun. You can feel the crack story. Years of small shifts, missed repairs, ignored warnings. You whisper, "You held on as long as you could." No one hears you. The foreman from the maintenance crew arrives, face pale. He avoids your gaze. You see. Don't need to say anything. He already knows. You told him. Weeks ago, a senator's assistant, sharp toga, sharper voice, starts demanding names. Who was responsible? Why there was no warning? The foreman points at the sky. "It was the heat," he says. The assistant nods. Satisfied with the lie, he writes it down. You return to the market wall. Sit on the same stone you always do, the one that stays cool well into the afternoon. A woman hands you a small fig. You take it. The flesh is soft, sweet, warm. You watch as the workers start cordoning off the area, ladders, ropes, barked commands. Most of them pretend they know what to do. Few actually do, but you do. And so, as the sky turns bronze and the first breezes return, you walk back beneath the still-standing arches. Your path is quiet, your steps slower. You touch each pillar as you pass, gently, as if thanking it for standing. You arrive at a new section. One few people walk beneath. It's where the moss is thickest and the water closest to the surface. You take out your rod, mark the shadows, measure the cool, because someone has to start again. That's always been the truth of Rome. It builds, it breaks, it builds again. The emperors get the arches, the builders get the coin, the poets get the memory, but the shade belongs to people like you. You look up at the fading line of the aqueduct against the evening sky, still broken, still proud, and whisper your own kind of prayer. Let me leave coolness where my name will never be. Then, with one final glance at the fallen stone, you turn and begin to measure the next line of shadow. Quietly, unnoticed, exactly the way it should be. The day begins before the beasts awaken, before the butchers finish sharpening their blades, before the gladiators wrap their wrists in worn leather, before the crowd begins to gather at the gates of the Flavian amphitheater, though most call it the Colosseum, as if it were a man, not a place. You arrive with the sand, cart after cart, sack after sack, pulled by donkeys that already hate the job. The grains spill like water from rough-woven bags, pale, coarse, carefully chosen. Not too white, or the blood is too vivid. Not too dark, or the dust becomes suffocating. You are not a fighter, not an architect, not a senator in his shaded box or a slave in chains. You are the man who manages the sand, and without you, there is no show. The arena's floor is a living thing. It breathes with movement, drinks blood, eats ash, and hides the secrets of the empire under every grain. The arena, as it's officially called, is more than dirt. It's regulation, ritual, performance. Your job is not simply to pour sand, it is to prepare it. Each event has different needs. For executions, the sand must be dry and shallow, easy to clean, easy to forget. For beast hunts, it must be thick to soak up panic and urine. For gladiator bouts, it must be dense but soft. safe for falls, yet firm for grip. For naval reenactments, the sand must be removed entirely and replaced by planks and pumps, a nightmare that takes days and ruins your back. Today it's blood sport. You check your list. 8 duels, 4 executions, 1 finale with exotic animals, brought in from the provinces at impossible expense. The kind of spectacle that makes emperors popular and bankrupt at the same time. You walk the arena floor barefoot to feel the texture. Not enough give in the southeast quadrant. You note it. Too many pebbles near the central post. You scoop them into your satchel. You kneel and spread a handful of fresh sand between your fingers. It must fall evenly, like time. If it clumps, it's damp. Damp sand cakes on weapons. Damp sand reveals tracks. Damp sand ruins illusions. You gesture. To your crew, they are mostly young, strong, tired. They rake the surface carefully. Not too deep, or the footing becomes treacherous. Not too shallow, or the blood will pool. One man rakes too fast. You stop him with a look. He slows. The gate opens briefly. A gladiator steps in, squinting against the early light. He paces the floor, lips tight, testing it. You pretend not to notice, but you watch him. How he shifts weight, how his heel sinks just slightly near the western edge. Later, you'll level it. The crowd begins to gather. The noise grows. You hate this part. The not yet. The waiting. The anticipation that hums like flies over fruit. You glance toward the imperial box. Empty for now. When it fills, so does the tension. You pass a guard who sneers. Still playing in dirt, old man. You don't answer. You haven't answered. So that question in years because you remember. You remember the first time the Colosseum flooded during a show. You were a boy then hauling sandbags. Someone miscalculated the angle of a drainage tunnel. Water crept up through the floor like a whisper. The lions slipped. A gladiator drowned, not from wounds, but from mud. After that, they called in you, not to clean, to understand. You did. You studied drainage, angle, grain weight, wind direction. You learned to spot where the blood would pool and how to mask it. You learned that a show is not just performed, it is engineered. The emperor enters. The crowd erupts. 1,000 hands wave, 1,000 voices scream, and no one looks at the sand. But it's ready. You retreat to the edge of the floor, standing in the shade beneath the arch. You watch the first duel begin, the weapons clash, one man slips, just for a moment. A bad pivot. His foot digs too deep. He recovers, barely. No one notices, but you do. And tonight, you'll rake that spot differently. The first kill is quick. The second, not you wince. Not at the violence, but at the spray. It hits the sand with a sick sound. You make a note in your mind to thicken that patch before the next bout. Already the color is spreading. You wonder, not for the first time, if the sand remembers. Does it carry echoes? Does it whisper the names of men who fell before? Or does it forget the moment the rake passes? Between fights, your crew moves fast. Raking, patching, replacing stained sections with clean sacks from the cart. You direct them like a composer. A gesture here, a whistle there. You've done this so long, words are unnecessary. By midday, the sun burns, the crowd is drunk with spectacle. The blood is drying faster now. That's good. Easier to clean. You find a moment to sit on a stone block near the gate. You watch your shadow shrink. You drink tepid water from a leather skin. You think of the things buried beneath this sand, bits of shattered blade, broken teeth, sometimes even bones, no. One retrieved in time. The arena floor is swept each night, but it is never empty. And you wonder, When the Colosseum crumbles, when the last lion is gone and the walls are dust, will anyone remember the man who shaped the earth beneath every scream? Or will they only remember the blood? The midday heat has crested, but the noise only rises. The crowd shifts like a living organism, laughing, shouting, gasping in waves. You've learned to measure time not by shadows, but by the pitch of that sound. You know when the novelty wears off, when the thirst begins to gnaw, when the people need something more. And always, always the floor responds. You adjust your footing behind the arch where the slaves wait with brooms, rakes, sacks of fresh sand and buckets, though the buckets are mostly for blood. A runner appears and hands you the next sequence of events, scribbled in haste, as always, 2 beast fights, 1 public execution, and a finale, 3-on-3 gladiators with foreign weapons. You exhale. The beast fights are the hardest. Not for the audience, they love the chaos, but for you. Because animals don't stay in lanes. They dig, they panic, they leave holes and streaks and mess that doesn't vanish even after the blood dries. The first fight is over fast. A pair of leopards, underfed, angry. The Venator spears them both before they reach him. The crowd is disappointed. They came for blood, not efficiency. But the next release makes up for it. A massive bull, horns painted gold, nostrils flared, muscles rippling, bursts onto the sand. It charges wildly, knocking over one of the prop trees. The dust rises in thick clouds. You squint to track it. The Venator circles, drawing the beast with taunts and color. You don't watch the fight. You watch the floor. The bull's hooves dig deep. His path leaves gouges. A turn near the eastern gate throws sand into the air, exposing the wooden subfloor for half a breath. You make a note. That section will need shoring up tonight. It's already weakened from the last stage chariot crash. The bull is finally felled by 2 spears. Its fall sends a tremor through the ground. The body is dragged away, leaving a thick trail behind. You signal your crew. No words, just a tilt of the wrist. They move like ghosts, silent, quick, practiced. The blood is scraped away. New sand poured over the rest. One man smooths the surface with a rake. Another tamps it down with a flatboard. To the crowd, it's as if nothing happened, but you know. The sand remembers. Then comes the execution. The condemned man is led in slowly. He walks with the shuffle of someone who's seen enough death to know how this will go. His tunic is too clean, it always is. The crowd likes contrast. The method today is lions. You don't watch, you never do. You stand near the gate, listening. It's not the screams that get you. It's the sound after, the silence that's too full, too still. You turn away before the lion is done. When the crew moves in to clean, you help. You don't have to, but you always do. The rake finds something hard. A tooth, maybe. You don't look closely. You toss it into the refuse bucket and pour sand over the stain until the red is pale enough to disappear. The final act approaches. The crowd roars louder now. The vendors push more wine. The sun has begun to dip, casting long shadows across the western edge of the arena. This is the moment Rome loves best, the golden edge of day, when bodies are tired, blood has been spilled, and the promise of one. Last kill hangs sweet in the air. The 3-on-3 is theatrical. Different fighting styles, exotic armor, props scattered around the arena, shields, nets, short blades, spears. You prepared the sand differently here. Thicker in the center, so that momentum slows. Looser at the edges, so slipping is more likely. You designed it like a trap, not for cruelty, for pacing. The match needs rhythm, like a poem, like a funeral march. The men enter. They bow to the emperor, then to the crowd. They do not bow to the sand. But they should. The fight begins. It is. Fast, then slow, then fast again. You've seen 1,000 bouts, and yet your breath still holds at the turning points. The swing that misses, the roll that's too wide, the stumble near the broken tile. One gladiator falls, clutching his leg. The crowd rises. A second follows, struck hard in the side. The third stands tall, blood dripping from a shallow cut on his forehead. You look at his feet. They're planted well, balanced. The sand held. He wins. The crowd cheers. The emperor nods. Later, in the corridors beneath the arena, the winners will drink and the losers will die or heal. The beasts will be skinned. The sandbags will be emptied and refilled, and you will walk the floor again. The crowd departs slowly, buzzing like hornets around the exits. The Colosseum exhales. Vendors sweep coins into bags. Children cry from hunger and heat. Somewhere, a torch flickers and dies. You cross the arena alone. You stop at the bloodiest patch, one you covered with clean sand just an hour ago. You bend, down, brush it aside. The stain is still there, it always is. And you think Rome remembers its generals, its emperors, its poets, but the floor remembers everyone else. You pour a final handful of sand over the mark. Smooth it with your palm, then turn away. Night doesn't fall on the Colosseum, it seeps in one torch at a time, one shadow stretched further, one gust of wind scattering what the crowd left behind. Grape skins, broken sandals, bits of cloth, a wooden toy snapped in half. The stands are empty. The great marble bowl, once filled with the roar of tens of thousands, now echoes only with brooms, quiet curses, and the squeak of carts. You are still here. You are always still here. The crew has finished the first pass, smoothing the worst of the day's chaos. Now the real work begins, the reset, the restoration of illusion, because tomorrow the sand must look untouched, innocent, as if it has never seen blood. You walk the edge of the floor, dragging your rake behind you like a second shadow. Not because you need to, because it calms you. Each groove in the sand is like a line in a scroll, an unread history. You know where each man fell, where the bull dug in, where the execution ended. The rake doesn't erase, it only covers. You pause at the southern edge near Gate 17. The wood beneath the sand creaks faintly. You kneel and brush the grains aside, revealing a square tile. It's not part of the arena floor, it's older. From before the Flavian dynasty, when this hill was a garden, when there were no games. You touch it. The stone is colder than the air. You leave it uncovered for a while. A reminder. Then you rake over it like always. Above, the moon catches on the highest arches. Owls nest in the niches where statues once stood. You remember when they installed those statues, carved gods. Emperors, mythic beasts, most are gone now, broken, looted, swallowed by time. But the sand remains. You sit on the steps of the gate tunnel. A slave brings you a bowl of water and a small piece of cheese. You eat slowly, chewing each bite until your mouth forgets the taste. He asks, "How long have you done this?" You don't answer right away. Instead, you tell him the story of the lion. It was 22 years ago. A storm had flooded the lower chambers. The lions, restless from the damp, wouldn't come up. The emperor was watching. The crowd was drunk. You were called not to fight, to fix. You walked into the cage, no armor, no torch. Just a bag of dried blood and sand. You scattered it along the tunnel, carefully. A scent trail, a message. The lion followed it. It worked. The beast rose, growling, majestic. The emperor applauded. The crowd cheered. No one clapped for you. But the lion had followed your line. That was enough. The slave nods, though he doesn't understand. He leaves. His shift is over. Yours is not. You step back onto the arena floor. The moonlight makes the sand look silver, almost clean. You kneel and press your palm to it. You wonder how many hands have done the same, searching for strength, or maybe just a connection to something solid, something ancient, because that's what this place is. Not just stone and blood, not just sport and spectacle. It is Rome distilled, its hunger, its cruelty, its love of order wrapped in chaos. And you, in your quiet way, have held its rhythm. You remember your first days, when your hands blistered from the rake, when your back screamed, when you thought of running but something kept you here. Not duty, not loyalty, precision, because the sand has rules. It teaches patience, teaches humility, teaches you that the smallest element, grain, placement, pressure, can determine everything. A stumble, a kill, a cheer. And now you are old. Your bones remind you with every step. The younger workers do more of the lifting, but they don't see what you see, not yet. The emperor has changed. So has the crowd. The shows are more violent now, the beasts more exotic, the games more desperate to impress. But the sand is still. Yours, you leave one section unraked, as you always do. Just one. A small patch near the west gate. You leave it as it was, scuffed, marked, flawed, so that tomorrow when the sun returns and the new crew arrives, you can show them what a mistake looks like, what it feels like beneath the foot, how to recognize it, how to fix it. You pour the last handful of sand from the day's final sack. It falls like a slow sigh. You smooth it with your hand and you think, one day the Colosseum will fall, cracked by earthquakes, picked apart by thieves, swallowed by ivy and silence. And tourists, centuries from now, will walk its bones and whisper of glory, but none of them will speak of the floor. None will mention the man who balanced it, bled over it, rebuilt it one grain at a time, and that is fine, because your job was never to be remembered. Your job was to make others believe the earth itself bent for Rome. You lift your rake one last time and begin again. You begin with a list, not a scroll, not a speech. A list ink on parchment, faded, smudged from handling, but unmistakably clear in what it represents. The execution calendar. You are not a judge, not a senator. You do not pass laws or swing a blade. You are something far more Roman. You are a scheduler. Your desk sits in the tabularium, Rome's vast bureaucratic center, tucked behind the Temple of Saturn, where paper outweighs flesh and time is measured in signatures. Your title is Quaestor Executorum, a minor clerkship, forgettable. You hold no power in court. No one bows when you pass. But when Rome needs someone punished, displayed, or remembered, it comes to you, because someone has to decide when. And in Rome, timing is everything. You open the drawer and pull out the wax tablet marked Dies Damnationis, the days of condemnation. It holds the dates when executions are permissible in public view. You flip through them like a priest reading omens. Nones of March, fully booked. Calends of April, still open, good. Ides of May, no executions, festival interference. Lupercalia, overbooked last year, must avoid the same mistake. You make a small mark with your stylus beside each date, murmuring to yourself. Each tick determines who will live another week and who will not. Outside, the city is already alive. You hear the vendors shouting, sandals slapping stone, the smell of baking bread carried through narrow windows. But inside, the air is dry, full of ink and dust. You are joined by Cassianus, your junior scribe. He is young, still eager, still thinks the condemned deserve last-minute reprieves. He hasn't yet learned how time in Rome flows forward only, especially when carved in wax. You hand him the list of names for today. 3 beheadings, 2 crucifixions, one thrown from the Tarpeian rock. He looks up, startled. That's 6. You nod. We were only asked to schedule 4. You nod again. Senator Domitius added 2 more late last night. He frowns. But we don't have room. Make room, you reply, because that's your real job, making space. For death. Rome doesn't care about justice, it cares about order. And order means everyone has their moment, their time slot, their placement on the stage of punishment. You spend the next hour coordinating venues. The Forum is too busy, grain dispute hearings. The Colosseum is preparing for games. No executions there today. The Gemonian stairs are available after noon. The Tarpeian rock must be cleared by military personnel. One has to file the request. You file it. You dispatch messengers to notify the lictors. One of the crucifixions will need to be rescheduled. Too much overlap with another event. The vendor who sells honey-roasted nuts near the Gemonian stairs has already complained about foot traffic during hangings. You make a note to stagger arrivals. Later in the morning, a delegation arrives from the Office of Plebeian Affairs. They've come with a request. A merchant, minor but well-connected, is facing execution for fraud. His family wants him executed quietly, not in the Forum, not on the stairs, perhaps in a side courtyard. Discretion, they say. You shake your head. He's on the scroll, you explain. What scroll? You gesture to the Liber Damnatus, the scroll of the condemned already posted outside the Senate. Once a name is written there, Rome has already seen it. The moment cannot be unwound. They leave disappointed. Cassianus asks quietly, do we ever remove names? You don't answer. You don't need to. By midday, the noise outside has changed pitch. The execution drums begin. Slow, distant, formal, a dull rhythm that echoes through alleyways, reminding citizens that justice is being done. You hear shouting from the courtyard. One of the condemned has resisted. A soldier broke his arm. You mark it on your tablet. Delay. Crucifixion moved. To tomorrow. There's no point forcing it if the nails won't hold. Another note. Senator's son scheduled for May. Keep date, but arrange less visible location. These are the details that matter. A man is not executed in Rome without context. It must serve a purpose, a message, a tone, a thief, public hanging, deterrence, a traitor, quiet strangulation, disgrace, a corrupt official, spectacle, reassurance, a Christian, public, loud, painful, example. Each death is a paragraph in a longer speech the empire tells itself. Cassianus returns with the revised slate. You review. 3 names remain unchanged. 1 has been delayed. 2 are new, still awaiting method. You choose crucifixion for 1. For the other, you mark a rare designation, silent disposal. He will be executed privately. No crowd, no record, no burial. You don't ask why. The request came with a seal from the Praetorians. Sometimes Rome kills in whispers. The sun moves across your desk. Your candle wicks begin to soften. The drums fade, and you think, the city has celebrated victories, mourned emperors, built temples and toppled tyrants. But today, like every day, it has continued, because someone scheduled death. And tomorrow, and they'll come again with scrolls, with names, with justifications, and you will ask only one question. When? By the 2nd hour after midday, the parchment on your desk is warped with sweat from your forearms. Rome is too hot for executions in the afternoon. The crowds wilt. The condemned faint before the sentence is read. The scent of open wounds travels faster, but the schedule does not care. The city must be cleared of its mistakes. and mistakes are your business. You unroll a new wax tablet, this one from the A Rationibus, the Imperial Treasury. The request is bureaucratic, not moral, a cost analysis of recent executions, specifically the public ones. The Emperor's advisors are asking how much blood is too much. You list the line items: labor, lictors, rope makers, crucifixion carpenters. Materials: wood for crosses, sharpened blades, animal feed for beasts. Cleanup, sand replacement, pest control, laundry costs for soldier tunics. Each category has its own column with estimates, adjustments, and footnotes for special cases. There's no line for mercy. Cassianus walks in with today's post-execution reports. He hands you a scroll, eyes lowered. One of the beheadings was botched. 3 strikes. The crowd booed. The lictor is being reprimanded, but he's old. Hands shake. His nephew is being trained to replace him. You mark the name. Note the decline. Another case. A woman accused of poisoning her husband was met with silence. The audience was distracted. A vendor had fallen from the steps, cracking his head on a wine jug. The blood upstaged hers. You sigh. An execution that doesn't move the people is a wasted performance. Cassianus hesitates. Then he asks, "Do you remember all of them?" You look up. All of the executions you've scheduled. Do you remember any names? You pause, stylus hovering over a number. You remember one, a boy, maybe 17. He'd stolen a scroll from a magistrate's home, a political text. Meaningless, really. He was arrested during a festival when Rome was already tense. Executions were ordered swiftly, to restore balance, they said. He was scheduled for strangulation. You'd questioned it, quietly, off the record, suggested a delay, perhaps a reassignment to labor. The answer had been a single word, stamped with red ink. Expedi. Carry it out. You didn't argue again. Cassianus says nothing more. Instead, you both return to your work. He tallies the crowd estimates from each execution site. You correct his numbers gently, reminding him to subtract those who left early. Only full witnesses count. You check the column for requests. These are the petitions submitted by citizens, pleading for someone to be punished. A neighbor, a rival, a debtor. Some are legitimate, most are personal. You sort them by handwriting. The angry letters are always darker, angled, pressed hard, enough to tear the parchment. The bitter ones are neater. Only a few make it past your desk because your job isn't just to schedule executions, it's to filter them. Rome can only process so many deaths at a time. Not for legal reasons, for emotional ones. The people need spectacle but not saturation. Too much and the crowd becomes dull, numb. They stop cheering, they stop caring, and when they stop caring, the emperor grows nervous. So you space them out carefully, like seasoning, enough to keep the city afraid, but not enough to exhaust it. Cassianus brings in the updated weather report. He has good instincts. Tomorrow will be too hot for crucifixions. You reschedule one for dawn, another for dusk. You mark one as postponed due to atmospheric risk. That's your code. No one questions it. You sharpen your stylus. It's become dull from overuse. You have another in the drawer and another, just like you. You glance toward the shelves along the wall, scroll after scroll, years of execution schedules. Deaths lined up like cargo manifests, some marked urgent, others marked ceremonial, a few marked accidental, though you know better. One scroll catches your eye, an old one, from 23 years ago. You pull it down. It's dated during the reign of Emperor Domitian, a bloody time. You ran the numbers back then, too. The deaths outpaced the festivals. Public morale had dropped. Bread riots broke out. You'd recommended fewer executions. Domitian had sent back the scroll, ripped in half. A statement. You still have the pieces, tied together now with thread. A reminder that you're here to arrange, not advise. A bell chimes. In the courtyard. You mark the time. A runner arrives with a wax-sealed tablet from the Praetorian office. You open it. 3 more names. No room, but you'll find room, you always do. You shuffle 2 existing entries. Move 1 crucifixion to a less visible location. Cancel 1 ceremonial lashing. Mark the tablet with reallocation. Add the new names. 3 men who yesterday still thought they had time. Cassianus looks over the revisions and says, "That's a tight morning." You nod. It will stretch. And as you sit back, staring at the columns of names, dates, locations, and methods, you realize the most Roman thing about executions isn't the violence, it's the form. The timing. The precise alignment of death with audience, place, and calendar. Not chaos control, because Rome is an empire of schedules. Even its punishments arrive by appointment. And you wonder, if the city ever falls, will the ruins speak of its justice, or only of how neatly it planned its cruelty? Evening comes softly to the tabularium. You don't hear it so much as feel it, the way the wax softens in the heat, the way the shadows lean longer across your desk, the way the light in the courtyard shifts from harsh to gold. You dip your stylus again. It drags a little more now. The wax is tired. The list is long. You begin the final task of the day, certifying completion. Not the executions themselves. Those are carried out by others. You certify their place in time. You enter. Names. Full with all titles. Date. Confirmed. Method. Executed as scheduled. Location. Accurate. Weather clear, no delays. Public response moderate, crowd attentive, no incidents. Outcome completed. This record is copied. 1 sent to the Office of Records, another to the Emperor's Archive, a 3rd stored here, folded between hundreds of other lists like it. You file it in drawer XXV. The wood creaks. You once thought about leaving. It was years ago when you were young enough to believe you could still be something other than what Rome needed. You'd seen too many innocent names appear, too many mistakes. You'd written a letter, resignation. You never sent it, not because you were afraid, but because you realized someone else would do it anyway. But not as carefully, not as cleanly, not as quietly. If death was going to be scheduled, it might as well be done by someone who understood its weight. You glance out the window now. The forum is nearly empty. A few figures pass through, late walkers, messengers, a stray cat. The blood on the stairs is already gone, scrubbed, washed, forgotten. Cassianus returns with a sealed scroll. He's grown over the years, more precise. Less shaken. You nod. He places the scroll gently beside your candle. He lingers. You look up. There's a name, he says slowly. On tomorrow's list. I wasn't sure if it was. Mistaken. You raise an eyebrow. He hands you a parchment. It's a personal note. No seal, just an initial. A powerful one. It lists a man's name. A man who until this morning worked 2 levels above you. A man with enemies. A man who'd spoken out at the wrong banquet. You know the name. You'd passed him once in the corridor. He smiled. You ask Cassianus, "Is this confirmed?" He hesitates, then nods. It's on the final tablet, with urgent discretion. He's to be removed at dawn. You stare at the name. You say nothing. You don't protest. You don't argue. You simply reach for the stylus. You write it in the log. You place it near the bottom of the wax. You adjust tomorrow's schedule slightly to make space, and you feel nothing, because it is not your job to feel. Your job is to organize, to prepare, to preserve the image of a city so well governed that even death appears efficient. You ask Cassianus to leave. You remain. You light the final candle. You open the Liber Damnatus, the official scroll of condemned citizens. Not the scratch notes, not the margin lists, but the central register, the one that outlives emperors. You unroll it slowly. The names are faded toward the top. Ancient names, rebels, thieves, traitors, names carved into stone, names lost to memory. You. Run your fingers over them, the ink flakes in places. The parchment smells of ash and leather, and then, without warning, you find your own handwriting, so many entries, dates you don't remember writing, methods you recall only vaguely. Sometimes you marked yes before the Senate even decided. Sometimes you copied names that never went to trial. Your stylus wrote them all. Your name is nowhere on the scroll, of course, only theirs. That's how Rome works. The people who hold the knife are never the ones who sharpened it. And you wonder, when you die, quietly probably in your sleep or in this chair, will someone schedule you? Will a clerk somewhere mark you down as completed? Will Cassianus write the final line of your life in tidy cursive? You close the scroll, you blow out the candle, you leave the window open a crack so the night air can settle over the parchment, and you whisper to no one, let it be said, that every death had its place. Then you reach for a blank tablet and begin tomorrow's list. It begins as so many things in Rome do, with marble, smooth, pale, cold in the mornings, carved with care, lined up in perfect rows, seats without backs, evenly spaced with circular holes in the middle and channels of water flowing beneath. Public toilets, latrinae, they are everywhere in Rome, along the forum, in the baths, behind. Temples, near markets, built into taverns, carved into the underbelly of amphitheaters. You walk past them every day, but someone has to manage them, maintain them, monitor them. You are one of those people, but you're more than a custodian. You are part of the curatores cloacarum, the bureaucracy that handles sanitation, not just cleaning but regulation, inspection, politics. Because in Rome, even where people relieve themselves, power is present. Your job today is to inspect the Latrina Maxima just north of the Forum Boreum. It's an old complex, built during the reign of Augustus, expanded under Hadrian, touched up during the mad generosity of Elagabalus, and ignored ever since. You arrive just after dawn. The marble is already warm. A faint smell lingers. Salt, rot, oil, wine, humanity. Not foul, just honest. Inside, 2 slaves are scrubbing the stone floors with vinegar and water. You nod to them. They nod back. You make a mark on your tablet, this ew. Benches here are in good condition, but the water beneath flows slow, too slow. You squat beside the central channel, watching it drag bits of straw and seeds, and who knows what toward the main sewer. You note the angle. Someone has likely tampered with the slope. Too many blockages in recent weeks. You'll need to file a report. You stand, brush your hands, and glance around. Graffiti covers the back wall. Political slogans, bad poetry, crude drawings of senators. You note which are new. Some will need to be removed. Others might be useful. Because in Rome, even toilet walls have ears. Cassius, the bath attendant, enters with his usual frown. "You're early," he says. "It's my day," you reply. He snorts. "Every day is someone's day in the sewer." You like him, he speaks plainly. You walk the rows of seats, tapping each with your stylus. Any cracks? No. Any wobbles? Just one. Seat 17. Someone's been leaning too hard. Probably the butcher's son. You glance toward the spongia shelf. The communal cleaning tools, sea sponges on sticks, resting in vinegar jars. 2 are missing. Again. You make another note. Then you step into the administrative alcove, the small space where complaints are stored, filed, and occasionally ignored. You read them in silence. My wife was harassed near the stalls. There was no sponge for 2 days. Water is too cold. The man who sings while using the toilet must be removed. You mark 1 for follow-up. It's the last one. A petition signed by 17 merchants requesting that the latrine be made a private facility. They claim they pay enough in taxes, that it is undignified to share a bench with freedmen, travelers, slaves. You sigh because this is the fight now, not over sewer function, over access. Rome is growing tired. It has more citizens than space, and the upper classes are pressing in, demanding separation, even while seated with their tunics hitched above the knee. You remember the old days when these places were loud with talk, where politics and bowel movements were entwined, deals made, bribes whispered, scandals born. But now the elite want walls, want privacy, want distance. You leave the alcove and return to the benches. A senator enters with a cloth over his nose. He glares at a merchant seated 2 spaces down. You watch the silent tension. It is the entire empire in miniature. Cassius mutters, "They'll build gold toilets next." You shake your head. "They'll just charge us to sit." You leave before. The crowd thickens. Outside near the drainage arch, a boy hands you a fresh scroll. It's an invitation. A Senate hearing on public defecation rights. You snort. You've been waiting for this, because Rome's public toilets are no longer just plumbing. They are politics. Who gets to sit? Who sits next to whom? Who pays for? The sponge? Who replaces the water? You walk back through the forum, watching as magistrates in clean robes stride past beggars who squat behind pillars. No sponge, no vinegar, just shadows. And you wonder, when they write of Rome's greatness, will they speak of aqueducts, temples, legions, or will they forget the rows of quiet marble, the hum of trickling water, the ink-smeared complaints? You open your tablet, add a final note. Seat 17 cracked, politics leaking in again. Then you turn toward the Senate steps because someone has to testify about toilets. The Senate hall is unusually full, not for war, not for a tax reform, but for toilets. The senators file in, faces set like statues, robes crisp, sandals polished. They whisper to aides, wave at allies, and pretend this session is beneath them. But it's not. They're here early, which means it matters. You sit on the edge as usual, not among the orators, but among the scribes, the surveyors, the invisibles, the ones who know the layout of every bench, the weight of a full sponge jar, the name of every vendor who drops orange peels into the drain. You carry with you a scroll, reports from every latrine within the city's walls, usage counts, complaint, tallies, maintenance logs. You even brought charcoal rubbings of seat graffiti, if anyone doubts the politics of excrement. The debate begins. Senator Cornificius stands first. His voice is slow and careful. He insists his proposal is simple. Convert 3 of the city's largest latrines into regulated exclusive facilities. In plain terms, make them off-limits to the poor. He uses softer words. Hygiene zones, restoration projects, upper-tier accommodations. He cites graffiti, mentions smells, implies, without saying, that disease has a social class. The chamber hums with agreement. Then a younger senator speaks, Gaius from the Aventine. He's new, still polishing his Latin with provincial grit. He says, I sat in the Transtiberium latrine last week beside a freedman who argued against the war in Dacia better than half the men in this room. Some scoff, but a few smile. You glance around. These lines are drawn deeper than marble, because Roman toilets have always been more than waste. They are forums for laughter, deals, slander, news. In the baths, on the benches, over shared sponges, the empire talks, and now it wants to stop. You're called to speak. No one claps. No one even looks at you as you stand and walk toward the days. You are not important, but the floor quiets because the room wants numbers, evidence, confirmation. You give them what they want. In the last lunar cycle, you say, the Latrina Maxima saw 2,406 users. Of these, 42% were merchants, 28% were craftsmen, 13% were known political clients. The remainder were slaves and transient poor. A few raise brows at political clients. You continue. Graffiti incidents were down. Complaints about sponge theft were up. Water flow decreased in the East Chamber. There were 3 fights, 1 proposal and 1 informal marriage vow carved above seat 5. Laughter, you let it fade. Restricting access to these spaces will not reduce problems. It will multiply them. Private latrines become targets. Public waste increases. Smell migrates. So does disease. You say it clearly. The more Rome separates its waste, the more it spreads it. You leave the rest unsaid, that this is not about sanitation. It's about control, visibility, status. Even here, you step down. No one asks questions. The Senate shifts. The proposal is not passed yet, but it's not dead. Later that evening, as you walk the length of the forum, you see a merchant defecating behind a pillar. He locks eyes with you, says nothing, neither do you. You make a note to check the sponge jars in the Aventine. At the Latrina Maxima, Cassius reports a cracked pipe. Water's backing up. You kneel, look, smell. Yes, politics has reached the plumbing. As you clean your hands in a basin, you remember something the sewer priest once said. Rome isn't what flows down from the Palatine. It's what flows under it. He meant waste, but he also meant truth. Because where people sit without titles, where sandals touch marble, where a senator might sweat beside a slave, there, Rome is real, and maybe that's why they want it walled. Off dawn begins with a drip. You're at the Latrina Julia, just off the Sacred Way, one of the smaller facilities. 8 seats. A single sponge jar. Modest, efficient, forgotten. And this morning it's leaking. Water seeps from the drainage stone beneath the 4th bench, darkening the limestone in slow pulses. It isn't flooding. Not yet. But you know what's coming. The pipe is cracked. You run your hand along the join, feel the floor. Not pressure, it's age. This pipe has carried 20 years of waste, heat, gossip, betrayal. It's ready to give up. You sit on a dry bench, pull out your wax tablet, and begin. Today's entries: pipe 4, fracture line widening. Sponge jar missing again. Graffiti removed, replaced overnight. You pause over the last item. It's always replaced. No matter how often the attendants scrape it away, someone comes in the night to write again. Today's reads, to be Roman is to sit beside someone you fear. You look at the curve of the letters, not angry, just practiced, reflective. You leave it for now. As the city wakes, the latrine fills. You watch them, come and go. Merchants discussing grain prices, a priest humming while relieving himself, 2 veterans sitting in silence. They don't speak, they don't need to, they fought together, you can tell. Then a senator enters, alone. He hesitates, scans the seats, chooses one at the end. He doesn't recognize you. They never do, but you remember him. He spoke in the last Senate hearing. Voted in favor of latrine segmentation, fewer shared benches, tighter access, licenses for sponge jars. A man who called public seating a symptom of a declining empire. Now here he is. His knees pop as he sits. He sighs. He's just a body like the rest. That's the truth the marble never forgets. You rise quietly. Leave through the side passage. In the street, the vendors are unpacking wares, chickpeas, garlic, scented oils. You pass a bucket vendor carrying vinegar for a sponge jar he won't get paid to fill. At the Office of Aqueduct Maintenance, you file a request to replace the cracked pipe. They ask which latrine. You say, Julia. They groan. Again? You nod. They tell you the budget is thin, that the Palatine baths need new tiles, that Senator Metellus wants warm water even in winter, that a broken toilet near the markets isn't urgent. You leave without argument. You've learned that in Rome the toilets rot slowly, not from usage, but neglect. By midday, the smell has returned to Latrina Julia. Subtle, damp. You burn a handful of mint leaves in a clay pot, wave the smoke near the door. Cassius taught you that trick. You remember the old man now. His last year, too tired to scrape the benches anymore, too proud to stop showing up. He used to say, "You can tell everything about Rome by how it handles its S." He never finished. That line. Just grinned. You sit on the bench he favored. Seat 5. Still stable. The sponge jar is still missing. You reach into your satchel, pull out the last sponge. It's coarse, clean. It'll last a week, maybe. 2 if no one steals it. You place it gently in the jar and pause. The sponge is a strange object, humble, foul, necessary, but also equalizing. Everyone uses it. Everyone grips the same stick, feels the same cold vinegar. It's the most democratic object in the city, and maybe that's why they keep disappearing. You stand, walk the row one last time, tap each bench. Crack, solid, stable, loose, solid, solid. That's life in Rome. Outside, you hear another debate forming in the forum about shipping routes or inheritance law or the exact wording of a senator's title. No one is debating the sponge. Not today. You pass a child squatting behind a column, ashamed, too young to understand the rules of public use. You give her a cloth and point to the entrance. She runs. At your desk in the curatore's office, you pull out one last form. You fill in the cracks, the flow rates, the sponge count, and you wonder, will anyone read this? Will they care when the pipes burst? When the marble seats lie in ruins? When tourists centuries from now run their fingers over the ancient stone and say, "Strange place, this toilet bench. I wonder who used it." You close the form. File it. As you stand to leave, the sun casts a warm line across the floor, like a thread pulling light through the gloom, and you think, maybe someday someone will know that Rome sat here, thought here, died here, spoke here, that in the end it wasn't swords or roads or columns that held the empire together. It was the sponge, passed from one stranger to another, in silence. The first tug of the thread comes before dawn. Not the sound of it, but the feeling, a tension in your fingers even in sleep, a memory of motion, a whisper from the loom before you rise. You are a toggler, one of the silent weavers behind the fabric that makes a Roman senator visible, not a seamstress. Not a laundress. You don't mend or clean, you create. From raw wool to finished fold, you shape dignity, thread by thread. You live in a workshop behind the Temple of Concord, in a district most citizens walk past without looking. The building smells of lanolin and soap ash, damp wood and dry dust. Inside are 6 looms, 3 spinning wheels, 1 hearth and a single locked box. The box contains the dyed threads. Not all togas are equal. The common citizen wears plain white. The candidate's is chalked bright. The magistrate's has a purple stripe. But the senator's Ah, that is something else. A real toga praetexta requires purpura, imperial purple drawn from the murex snail, drop by drop, boiled in secret, traded like gold. And once it arrives in your workshop, it passes through your hands. You rise before the sun. Wrap your head. Rub your hands with olive oil to keep them soft. You check the wheels. One is out of line. You adjust the peg. No words. The others are still asleep. You prepare the wool. Wash it again. The merchant claims it came from Tusculum, but you know Tusculan sheep don't shed. You begin to spin. And as you do, your mind settles. Not on poetry or love or even coin, but on weight. Because a senator's toga is not light. It is not soft. It drapes heavy across the shoulders, folds like legal parchment, and moves like a burden. So on purpose. You once asked your mother why the garment was so long, so impractical. She said, because Rome wants its men to carry law on their backs. You're older now. You understand. The wool, once spun, is dyed. Carefully. You handle it. With bone needles and wax gloves. A stain is a scandal. Hair blotch is shame. Then you begin the weave. Each loom stroke sings. Wood against wood. Tension released. Tension returned. The room smells of sweat and dye. You don't speak. No one does while weaving, because each thread must be counted. Each fold measured. Each pass perfect. There is no tolerance for error. Not in something worn by a man who passes judgment. He will never know your name, but he will tug his toga before entering the Senate. He will adjust the fold near the heart. He will feel your hands in the fabric, and still he will never thank you. That's fine, because the toga is not about him. Not really. It's about Rome. The idea of Rome. The weight of it. The roll of the cloth at the shoulder, like a scroll unspooled. The hem grazing the ankle, like law following the man. The stiffness of the fabric reminding him he carries history. You take a break only once, mid-morning, a sip of water, a crust of bread. Outside you hear a cart pass, a crier announcing the result of a trial. A slave being whipped. You keep weaving. Cassia, the oldest weaver in the shop, whispers that a new senator has ordered a triple-folded stripe. Extravagant, illegal maybe, but likely to be excused. You prepare the extra thread. By noon, you're back. Aches, the bench is worn, you shift your hips, adjust your shawl, keep working. A messenger arrives, a boy no more than 12. He brings a sample of cloth from another workshop. It's sloppy. The purple is faded, the fold is too narrow. You run your finger across it. You feel dishonor in the thread. You hand it back. Say nothing. The boy leaves. By late afternoon, the room is hot. Wool sticks to your fingers. The dye dries too fast. You dampen the cloth with breath. Adjust the tension again. You remember the time you made a pretexta for a man who was assassinated 3 weeks later. The news came as you were rinsing the final hem. You hung it anyway, folded it, placed it in the box. He was buried in it. You wonder if the cloth outlived his memory. You finish one length today, just one. Enough for the upper half of a single garment. It took 10 hours, but it's flawless. You store it on a cedar rod, mark the weight, sign your name, just an initial. Tomorrow someone else will begin the embroidery. A different hand, another forgotten name. You will never see the garment finished. You will never see it worn, but you will know that Rome's dignity, its pride, its authority, all of it, was measured in paces. Yes, but also in threads. And you wonder, when the Senate falls, when the marble cracks and the scrolls rot, will anyone remember the women who wove the Republic into cloth? Will they know that before law was spoken, it was worn? You blow out the lamp and the thread in your hand goes still. The next day begins before you do. A knock, not urgent, not polite either. The kind of knock that implies official presence. You wipe the wool grease from your hands and open the door. It's a man in a light grey tunic. No insignia, no smile. "I'm here for the cloth," he says. You point him toward the cedar shelf. He opens the box without reverence, lifts the folded strip of senator's wool like it's flour or grain, checks it, folds it again, not a word of praise, just a nod, then, "The next one is due in 4 days. 4. You hesitate. "It's not possible." He pauses, turns back. "It will be," he says, and leaves. You close the door, fingers trembling, not from fear, but from familiarity. That man comes when things are changing. Not in Rome's streets, in its symbols. You return to your bench. Cassia is already spinning. She saw the man too. Says nothing. You both understand. Rome is rushing towards something, and the togas must keep up. They always do. You take up your bone needle and begin the day's work. The wool has softened overnight. The dye is darker today, bluer than usual. You mark it. The senator who commissioned this one is new, just elected, born in Numidia, tall, charismatic, dangerous. He asked for double purple bands, not legal, not yet, but you know what it means. A signal, a statement. He intends to be noticed. So, you choose your stitches carefully, not because you approve, but because every flaw in the fold will be seen as yours. This is the part no one understands. A bad stitch is a political act. A wobbly hem on a senator can cost a weaver her hand, or her life. You stitch in silence. The cloth grows in your lap, like a second skin, heavy, scented with vinegar and ash. The hours pass. At midday, a girl named Livia drops her shuttle. She curses softly. Cassia glares. You remind her. The cloth listens. It's something your mother used to say, that the fabric holds every voice, every hand that passes through it. A cursed weave invites a cursed wearer. Livia picks up her shuttle. Work slower now. You pause for water. The sky outside is white with heat. A man shouts at a donkey. A child cries in rhythm. Inside, the room hums with wood and wool. You think of the togas you've made that have walked into the Senate, into courtrooms, into temples, into civil war. You think of the man who wore one into exile, another into a triumph. One, young, stupid, bright-eyed, who wore his to trial and was stoned before the sentence. He bled into your fold. It wasn't the cloth's fault, but it still felt like failure. You finish the hem of the shoulder wrap. The hardest part. The balance, the way it must cling but not twist, fold but not sag. Cassia checks your work. Her fingers are slower now. She's near her end. You've known for a while. "I want to die at the loom," she says. "Like my mother." You don't answer. Not because it's strange, but because it's likely. Livia breaks a thread. Again, you offer to help. She refuses. You respect that. In the afternoon, a runner arrives with wax tablets, edicts, new dye regulations, thread count requirements, signature placements. You unroll the sample. It's absurd. A toga twice as wide, meant to trail behind the senator like a cloak, flamboyant, impractical, expensive. But it will happen, because Rome is moving again, not forward, but louder. The cloth must reflect it. You wonder what's coming. You've seen togas shrink under emperors who feared dissent. You've seen them grow grand under those who needed distraction. You've stitched dignity into lies, honor into fools, memory into tyrants. And still you stitch, because it is not your place to change Rome, only to wrap it. As the day ends, you hang the cloth. It's good, not your best, but good. You trace your initial into the hidden seam. It will fade before the man ever sees it, but it's there, your voice in the silence. Outside, a procession passes, musicians, dancers, priests. You glance through the window. One man in the crowd is already wearing a toga you made last year. It's dirtier now, softer. The stripe has bled slightly. The wool has learned the shape of his body. You feel nothing, not pride, not shame, just weight. The weight of cloth, the weight of a city trying to hold itself together with folds. And you wonder, when the looms go silent, and the walls fall, and senators flee in merchant robes, will the last toga maid still carry your stitches? Will someone find it centuries later and ask, who wove this empire together? You sit, you rest your needle, and tomorrow you begin again. The final day of the E. Commission begins with a tear, not in the cloth, but in the air. The workshop is too quiet. The usual rhythm, wood creaking, thread snapping, breath passing between teeth, has stalled. Cassia isn't here. You find her near the dye vats, arms folded across her chest, eyes fixed on the wall. She came, she says. You know who she means. The E. Inspector. A woman this time, tall, slender, with rings on every finger and ink on her chin. She arrived with 2 guards and a scroll marked Imperial Review. She said nothing. Just walked the room, touched each loom, inspected the stored fabrics, lifted folds, sniffed the wool, then she spoke. Starting next week, all senatorial garments are to be submitted to the Office of Visual Consistency before delivery. Visual consistency. As if the folds of Rome's dignity are fonts on a scroll. Cassia said nothing. You said nothing. Livia's hands shook, but she kept spinning. Now the woman is gone, but her shadow lingers. You return to the loom. The final toga is almost done. The one with double purple bands. The senator with ambition. The one who will strut into the curia. Robes trailing. Face polished like bronze, speaking of tradition, and he'll never know that the final fold was made by someone furious. You pull the thread tighter, too tight. It snaps. You pause, breathe, set it aside. Replace it. That's how Rome works. Snap, replace, repeat. Mid-morning, a runner delivers a message. The ambitious senator has changed the design. He now wants a cut-out corner, a fashionable asymmetry seen in the Greek provinces. It shows movement, he says. It shows style. Cassia, you look up. Who? The senators, the men, the city, do they know we're here? You want to lie, say yes, say they speak of you in the Senate, that your initials are praised, that your stitches are honored, but instead you say, they know their robes don't wrinkle. She nods. That's enough for now. By afternoon, the cloth is ready for its final process. Pressing. You heat the smooth stone. Drape the toga across the frame. Layer it with wool padding. Press carefully. Not too long, or the purple fades. Not too short, or the lines won't hold. The folds must speak. The upper fold must say, I carry law. The shoulder drape must whisper, I do not sweat. The hem must murmur, I belong here. You press each with a kind of reverence that has nothing to do with the man who will wear it, and everything to do with the idea it carries. Cassia watches from her bench. She's not weaving today, just observing, breathing, remembering. You know what this means. This is her last day, not because she said it, because of the way she wraps her shawl, because of the way she folds her hands, because of the quiet. You finish the pressing. You fold the toga slowly, the triple bend, the soft roll, the alignment. You place it in the cedar chest. Then, without thinking, you tuck in a single strand of unspun wool. A secret, a signature, a reminder that this cloth was made by hands that lived. Cassia nods when she sees it. No words, just approval. That night, after the others leave, you stay behind. You sweep the floor, lay out tomorrow's wool, straighten the chairs. You touch each loom one by one. They hum faintly, residual warmth in the wood. And you think, this is the part no one records. No poet writes of weavers. No statue holds a needle. But this is where Rome wrapped itself in meaning, in thread, in structure, in silence. You sit. You touch your wrist, still warm from the wool tension, and you wonder, when the empire forgets itself, when the folds unravel, and togas become costumes, and the purple stripe fades into myth, will someone unroll one? You begin your shift at the caldarium door. Not inside the heat, no, just outside it, on the edge of the steam, where the marble floor begins to sweat, and men begin to forget the world. You are a bathhouse doorkeeper, a ostiarius balni, a watcher, a minder, a quiet guard of sandals, towels, tokens, gossip, and ego. This isn't a low job. Not really. You don't clean. You don't stoke the fires. You don't massage the backs of senators or oil the arms of gladiators. But you do something no one else wants to admit is necessary. You control entry. Because the bathhouse isn't just about washing, it's about access. You arrive before sunrise. The floors are cold. The air smells of vinegar, rose oil, ash, and stale ambition. You unwrap the tally board. It's wood, carved with small hollows to mark the day's guests. You count them with pebbles. Senators are marked with polished glass. Soldiers with black. Stones, merchants with bits of bone. Slaves, no stones, no tally. They enter at the end of the day, if at all. The first man arrives just as the fires beneath the hippocaust rumble awake. He doesn't speak, just hands you his shoes and stretches his arms. You wrap his tunic in a cloth, place it on the shelf, make a mark. He nods, walks into the warm. Behind him, a senator arrives, too early. But he's loud about it so no one notices. He tosses his sandals toward you, doesn't wait for acknowledgement. You retrieve them, smell faintly of garlic and perfume. You place them in a box marked reserved. By the third hour, the apoditerium, the dressing room, is humming. Men joke, argue, compare muscle tone. Some are here to bathe, some to be seen, some to eavesdrop. You stay at your post, you watch it all, because you've learned something most bathers forget. A Roman bath is not for the body, it's for the mind of the empire. Here, in steam and sweat, Rome negotiates, gossips, and judges. You've seen marriages arranged on these steps, seen enemies reconcile after a shared plunge, seen senators whisper treason while rubbing oil into each other's backs, and you've seen men beg for their lives in the frigidarium, thinking the cold would protect them from fate. You open the door. Steam rolls past your feet like a polite ghost. Inside, the caldarium hisses, stone warmed for hours, smelling of citrus and wet brick. The older men sit in corners, arms draped over stone benches as if made of clay. A boy runs past you, too fast. You stop him. He grins. He's new here, an attendant. He spills a jug of oil and panics. You nod to the mop. He gets to work. You've been here longer than most of the attendants. They don't know your name, but they respect the way you tap your cane once when a visitor gets too loud, or twice when someone forgets to leave their token, or 3 times when someone slips something into their robe that shouldn't go home with them. The baths are public, but you are the gate. Later in the morning, a woman arrives. Not uncommon. The Thermae have mixed hours, and today is one of them. She wears rings on every finger. Her hair smells of jasmine. Her eyes dart around, calculating. She hands you a folded note with her sandals. You don't read it. That's not your place. You place it in the box with her tunic. Fold it neatly. Behind her, a poet arrives. Pale, thin, coughing. He always complains about the heat. Always returns the next day. He leaves a coin for you. You leave it on the shelf. You're not allowed to accept. Tips. You never return them either. You simply don't acknowledge, that's the rule. By midday, the bathhouse is a theater. Voices echo, feet slap stone, oil flows, water splashes, and still, you watch the door. Because that's where the friction lies, not in the heat, but in who gets to pass. You've been asked to look the other way. Many times. Once a senator's son arrived late, covered in bruises, demanded entry. You said, "The hours are over." He said, "Do you know who I am?" You replied, "Someone who isn't dry yet." He left, returned a week later, smiled. No, bruises. Sometimes the door is the only line that holds. You count the tokens again. One missing. You know which guest. You'll retrieve it when he dozes in the tepidarium. You always do. By late afternoon, the air thickens. The lamps are lit. The water darkens slightly, stirred by skin and time. You open the back window for airflow. You smell the olives roasting in the tavern below. You think, this is the scent of empire. Smoke, salt, sweat, rosewater. You sit, adjust. Your stool. A man passes by, nods, drops a polished pebble into your cup. You say nothing, but you make a mark on the board. You've learned something in your years at the threshold. People change when they undress, not just clothes. Voice, pace, power. A senator becomes soft. A soldier becomes still. A liar forgets to lie, and a doorkeeper becomes a mirror, silent, polished, undeniable. Of these garments and say, this was made by a woman who knew how to hold a city in her hands. You reach for your needle, thread it one last time, and begin again. By the 6th hour, the bathhouse hums like a hive. Heat seeps from every tile. Water trickles from bronze taps in a song only the old attendants understand. And still you sit, not inside, never inside, but at the edge, where the warmth meets the world, where Rome peels off its clothes and forgets who it is for a while. The doctor creaks. Another guest enters. You raise your head and without a word hold out your palm. He places a token there, a small clay disc marked with the bath's sigil. You glance at it. Authentic. You hand him a towel. He nods, steps past you. This rhythm is ancient, older than some laws, older than some temples. You don't ask names. They don't ask yours. You measure them by the weight of their sandals, the quality of their towel, the way they look at you or don't. You remember who's respectful, and you remember who spits. This is your power. Not law, not violence, but memory. You hear a small commotion from the apoditerium. Voices raised, a C tray dropped. You don't move yet. You listen. It's two merchants arguing over a loan. One owes, one overcharged. You wait for a third voice to step in. A slave, a companion, a calmer. It doesn't come. So you rise. Your feet know the path. The warm stone. The curve of the hallway, the dip in the floor where someone always slips. You round the corner. The two men are standing too close. The oil boy looks terrified. You step between them, not forcefully, just firmly. No words. You hold out your hand. Both freeze. The boar. Younger man, sweaty, red-faced, realizes first. He drops his token into your hand. You place it on a tray. Gone, you say, just once. He blinks, but you tilt your head. He leaves. The other man exhales. He deserved it, he mutters. You don't care. This isn't justice. It's stability. Back at the entrance, you mark the incident. Just a scratch on your wax tablet. Later, someone might ask about it. They usually don't. You sit again. The sun is sinking outside. You feel the light shift before it fades. It hits the steps at a different angle, turns the steam gold. That's your favorite part of the day. The light on steam, like breath caught in stone. A boy brings you a cup of barley water. Cool. rough on the tongue. You nod in thanks. You sip, slowly. Let the sounds roll over you. The splash of feet in the palestra pool. The scrape of a razor in the barber's corner. The slap of towels. The low hum of half-spoken secrets. You know more than you should. You know which men speak louder when their wives are away, which friends bathe too often together, which soldiers sneak in early to meet messengers, then leave through the side gate. You never speak of these things. That's the rule. Not written, not posted, but real. The doorkeeper who gossips doesn't last long. His chair is taken, his name erased. Yours is still here. Cassius, the old furnace stoker, once told you, "The bathhouse is the only place where everyone is honest, and no one tells the truth." He was right. You hear someone coughing inside, wet, hard. You glance toward the laconicum, the dry heat room. An older man is hunched near the wall. He waves you off. You keep watching anyway. He's one of the veterans. Comes twice a week, sits alone, watches the floor. He used to have friends, now he has steam. You keep an eye on him. That's your other job. Not written down, just known. You don't let people die alone in here. You make another mark on the board. Not a tally, just a dot. The man is weakening. He'll stop coming soon. You want to remember when. As the sky darkens, the lamps are lit. Their glow turns the tiles orange. The statues, Apollo, Venus, Hercules, look almost alive in the flicker. Their stone eyes glisten like wet skin. You wonder sometimes what they see. You pull your cloak tighter. The air is cooling now. Most of the day bathers have gone. The slaves. Will enter soon, the poor, the forgotten. Those who wait until the heat is free, the oil thinned, the floors sticky. You open the door wider for them, because this too is Rome. Not just the clean hands, but the tired ones. You pass a mirror on the wall. You rarely look. But tonight, you pause. You see your face. Creased, burned by years of steam and silence. Your eyes are dull, but your posture still straight. Because you are the door. You keep the heat in. You keep the chaos out. And when people forget what they said, what they confessed, what they felt in the water, you remember. You sit, you wait, and you wonder. When the baths crumble, when the pipes burst, and the hippocaust dies, and the poets stop praising heat, will someone find this threshold? Will they see the worn groove in the floor, carved by sandals and steps? Will they ask who sat here, and will someone say he held no sword, no scroll, no statue, but he held the line? It is near the end of the day now, the kind of time when voices drop low, when footsteps echo longer than they should, and when heat feels less like comfort and more like memory. You are still at your post. The marble beneath your feet is warm, but fading. The steam no longer roars. It sighs. The last guest of the day enters. A soldier. You know him by gait alone. He doesn't speak. Just drops his token in your hand, as always. He winces. Something in the leg, old wound never healed right. He used to enter with 2 companions. One died in Germania, the other gone south. Or disappeared. You hold his towel out like a flag of surrender. He takes it, nods, moves into the warm like he's stepping into the past. You mark his tally. You wonder how long he'll keep coming. You wonder that about everyone now. The thermae have changed. New rules, new taxes, fewer attendants, less oil. They say the empire is stretched thin, but it's here, right here, that you see it unravel. Not on battlefields. Not in speeches, but in the towels that don't get cleaned. In the cracks on the mosaic floor no one patches anymore. In the silence where laughter used to echo, the steam thins. The guests are almost all gone. Only the poor remain now. Those who waited all day to bathe. They do not hand you tokens, they have none, you nod anyway. Let them pass. You've done this for years. Decades, perhaps. You stopped counting. You were here when the marble was polished, when the statues gleamed, when the water never stopped running. Now you keep a rag nearby to mop the leaks. The soldier emerges again, shoulders steaming, eyes hollow. He's thinner. You hand him his sandals. He thanks you, rare. Gravel in the voice. Maybe the first time he's ever said it. You nod once, sharply. Not acknowledgement, just receipt. He leaves into the cold. You sit. Watch the last of the poor shuffle in. The boy who used to run the towels now limps. Something happened to his foot last week. He didn't say, you didn't ask. He still brings the oil tray, still wipes the benches, because that's what we do, isn't it? Even when things crack. We hold the frame together. You've never entered. The baths yourself, not once. Not even to dip your hand in. That's not part of the role.